The phone vibrated in her bag, and Kate quickly pulled it out. For a moment, she looked vinegar and verjuice, but she pulled herself together, and her mouth tilted up in the usual sweet smile. "Lucy, what a surprise," the woman said happily. "Meet up? Yeah, sure. Let's go to the cafe in an hour." Kate dropped the call and grimaced again. She couldn't stand Lucy, and it was mutual. But the women kept in touch anyway, trying to show each other their superiority in everything. Their fake friendship had started back at school, when they had bullied everyone together. Mary, the modest girl, a typical straight-A student who was unattractive, wore thick glasses and threadbare clothes, got the worst of it. After school, they drifted apart. She didn't know what had become of Mary, but she saw Lucy again after university. Communication was back to the way it had been before: mutual banter, strained smiles, and hypocrisy. It was unclear why they kept in touch. Most likely, they didn't want to give in. To stop communicating first was like admitting you were weak. That was something Kate couldn't afford. The woman headed toward the cafe. On the way, she stopped at the jewelry shop and bought a new bracelet. Her husband wouldn't be poorer for the expense, and it was necessary for her to make Lucy jealous. Kate was purposely 20 minutes late, but still got there first. She gritted her teeth in anger. Next time, she'll have to be half an hour late. Lucy arrived happy and content 10 minutes later. She gave her friend sitting at the table a nagging look. Her eyes stopped on her new bracelet. "Hi, you're still squandering your husband's money, I see." "Hey, unlike you, I can afford it and not have to wear the same jewelry for months on end," she replied venomously. The women, like two snakes, were just waiting for a chance to go for their rival's throat. Lucy suggested a way to unwind, but restaurants and clubs were already boring without new, vivid emotions and experiences. Suddenly, Kate remembered her recent musings. "Do you remember Mary?" she asked. "That ugly nerd girl that all the teachers were crazy about?" criticized Lucy. "Of course I do. If it wasn't for her, I'd have gotten the highest grades in my class." "Don't flatter yourself," Kate interrupted. "It wasn't the nerd who got in your way. It was your lack of judgment. Do you have any idea where she disappeared to?" "No idea. I'm not interested in following the wretched," Lucy grimaced. "That's an idea, though. Let's go find her and relive the good old days and have some fun." The former classmates synchronously tiddled their mouths up in a shark's grin. The opportunity to make fun of someone was something that appealed to them. Now they set about the details of the plan. Without an audience, no banter could be enjoyed, so an appreciative crowd had to be organized. The conspirators didn't take long to decide to organize a high school reunion. The occasion was just right: 15 years since graduation. The show required appropriate decorations. The women knocked themselves out looking for a decent venue, but found a new restaurant that the owner agreed to rent out through an acquaintance. Everything had to be perfect, so the girls went to great lengths to decorate, arguing harshly about the food and drinks to be ordered. Once the provisional menu, music, and decorations were agreed upon, Kate and Lucy started looking for their classmates, but it wasn't easy to do. Some had left for another city, and some had even changed countries. Even the few people who had stayed in the city couldn't be brought together. Some had plans, some had children, and some had jobs. The girls genuinely didn't understand why they couldn't all meet together, putting off their business for later. There were complications with that particular Mary. No one was in touch with her and had no idea where she was enrolled or where she even was at the moment. Kate had found an old social networking page, but the owner hadn't visited it in a while, so there was little chance of meeting. But Kate texted anyway. "Well, in case she signs in and sees it, she's probably working as a cleaner somewhere," Lucy shrugged. That would be the end of the story. The pseudo-girlfriends had almost forgotten about their idea when Kate got a reply one morning. Mary didn't mind meeting the whole class and asked for advance notice of the location and date of the event. Kate and Lucy perked up. This time, they had set the date a month in advance, and many classmates had agreed to come. The girls were sure that if the nerd had a husband, it would be some nutty geek. It was even nicer to make fun of such, so invitations were sent out to everyone, indicating +1. Lucy and Kate were so enthusiastic about their idea that they even stopped spraying venom at each other. The last week had been a nightmare. Solarium, beauty salon, the most expensive dress boutiques. I think I'm getting a gray hair from stress, Kate sighed, fixing her hair in front of the mirror. It's all right, Lucy reassured her. You'll get your husband to go on a cruise. Then you'll rest. It won't be long now. That day, Kate kept up with her husband until they left the house. Everything had to be perfect, so she checked 10 times to make sure he was wearing the right shade of shirt and what knot he had tied on his tie. She adjusted her designer dress and exhaled. The show was starting. Lucy was one of the first to arrive, not to miss a moment of triumph. Kate soon appeared too, and both women took on the unspoken role of the hostess of the evening. They stood at the entrance of the restaurant and began to greet the guests. Women and men entered the hall, in whom they could hardly guess their former classmates. Some of them had put on 60 pounds, some of them had grown beards, and some had gone from brunette to strawberry blonde. "Where is she?" Kate hissed impatiently. "What if she doesn't come?" "But she promised us she will." Her friend brushed her off. "You know she's such a drag. She'll keep her promise." The door swung open and a large group of people rushed in, a noisy, merry hurricane. Out of the crowd peered a grown-up, but still hooligan face of Alex, who had once amused the whole class. "Oh, hi, girls," he announced cheerfully, and then gave Kate and Lucy a big hug. While they fought Alex off and tidied up their outfits, the company made their way into the hall. Kate turned her head, but the familiar, unkempt nerd was nowhere to be found. With a sigh, she turned back to Lucy. Suddenly, her gaze stopped on her own husband, who was chatting with an unfamiliar woman. He was smiling so flatteringly and was ingratiating himself to the woman. "Who is that bimbo?" Kate hissed indignantly in her friend's ear. Lucy gave the stranger an indifferent look and shrugged. "Maybe someone's wife? I don't know." Kate wasn't satisfied with that answer, and she headed resolutely toward her husband. She couldn't allow her man to be flattered by anyone else. But no sooner had she approached than the two of them nodded politely to each other and dispersed. Kate dug her sharp claws into her husband's hand and threatened in his ear, as well as an angry cobra would. "Who the hell is that? Why are you bowing down to her?" "Kate, honey, loosen your grip," the husband grimaced. "That's a co-owner of the company I work for. I didn't expect to see her here. Let me introduce you." "I don't need to." The woman brushed it off and returned to her observation post. A couple of other latecomers approached, but Mary the nerd was still missing. Lucy snorted irritably. "I knew it was all for nothing," Lucy grunted. "Kate, Lucy, how long are you going to stay at the door?" someone at the table said. "Or are you waiting for someone else?" They looked at each other in surprise. Did they miss it? Lucy and Kate hurried to the company. The table was jolly, with everyone laughing and reminiscing about school stories. No matter how hard the women looked, they didn't recognize more than half of those present. Kate's husband moved closer and whispered in her ear, "I'm going to introduce you to Mary, my boss. Please be modest, or I know you might say something and offend the other person. My salary depends on her, which means your access to money." Kate nodded, pulling on a sweet smile. Her husband turned somewhere to his right and spoke loudly, introducing his wife. Kate cast an appraising glance at her husband's boss. A well-groomed lady with a stylish haircut, fashionable makeup, wearing a new Armani pantsuit. "Nice to meet you," Kate smiled. "We've known each other since first grade. Don't you recognize me?" The boss raised an eyebrow. Kate scrutinized her face and opened her mouth in surprise. Sitting in front of her was Mary, the same one they'd laughed at in school. Her glasses and freckles and crooked teeth were now gone. Her hair had gone from a mouse-colored mess to a stylish, dark haircut. Even her posture had changed. Mary was no longer a slouch. Now she was a confident woman whom it was scary to get in the way of. And then Kate remembered her husband's words. So her husband's earnings and her posh life are all owed to Mary. It was a huge blow, a shock so great that all Kate could do for the rest of the evening was smile and answer questions inappropriately. Lucy didn't know the reason for her friend's strange behavior. She recognized Mary at about the same time as Kate, but she didn't get any support from her former classmate, so she decided to go on the attack herself. "Oh, honey, Mary," she shouted loudly across the table, "is that you? Did the plastic surgeon work against expectations?" No one laughed. Mary didn't start slouching as she had done before. She turned quietly to Lucy and answered softly, "Not a surgeon, a psychologist. He helped me to love myself. My beloved husband also supports me in all my endeavors, and changing my hair and getting my eyesight corrected is not that difficult. So did you marry well? Lucy kept talking. Found yourself a cash machine? Mary and her husband laughed out in response. Everyone thinks so, the man nodded. In fact, in our family, the wife earns more. I'm just a businessman with a local company, while Mary has an international corporation. When Lucy heard that, she almost gnashed her teeth in anger, but she wasn't going to stop. Of course everyone thinks so, she nodded. After all, everyone remembered what Mary was like in school. Her clothes were all shabby, and she looked a bit rough, too. I was, Mary nodded calmly. My mother worked 2 jobs to support me and my bedridden grandmother. There wasn't enough money for new clothes. Times were hard. There was a silence at the table. No one had ever thought about their classmate's family. She was being bullied because everyone did it. No one knew the details of Mary's life. She had no friends. Only today, her classmates found out personal information and were in utter bewilderment. In the midst of this silence, Lucy's contemptuous ragamuffin sounded particularly loud. The silence went from cozy to prickly. Dozens of eyes stared at Lucy reproachfully. I see you haven't grown up. Alex shook his head. The party resumed and was soon back on track, except that Lucy and Kate didn't feel comfortable anymore. Their plan to make fun of their classmate had collapsed. In this celebration of life, they found themselves the center of scorn and ridicule. Friends, I hope you enjoyed this story. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up. And consider subscribing to our channel and hitting that bell icon to be notified of when we have another story to share with you. Until then, take care.